Our top story, well, after languishing in a Pakistani jail for over 6 years, the Indian national Hamid Nihal Ansari has been finally handed over to Indian officials at the Wagah border. Ansari crossed over to India through the Attari-Wagah border earlier today. Ansari left the Mardan jail in Pakistan to be brought to Wagah by road. The decision to release and to deport Ansari was announced only on Monday, and the spokesperson for the Pakistan Foreign Office had tweeted about the development. However, Islamabad was extremely undiplomatic in referring to Hamid Ansari as an Indian spy. Earlier, New Delhi had issued a note to the Pakistan High Commission in India asking for the release of Indian prisoners who have completed their sentence in the earliest possible way, and the 33-year-old Ansari had been under the custody of Pakistan since 2012. He was arrested by Pakistani authorities after he allegedly entered the country illegally through Afghanistan. Hamid Nihal Ansari allegedly went to Pakistan to meet a girl he had befriended online. And in 2015, a military court in Pakistan sentenced Ansari for 3 years in prison. The court found Ansari guilty of possessing a fake Pakistani identification card. Ansari's lawyers, however, had claimed that he was repeatedly attacked by his fellow prisoners over the last few months, and Ansari's jail term ended only on the 15th of December this year. And Siddhant Sibbal is now joining us live for more on this. And Siddhant, as we see these visuals of Ansari coming back home, what an emotional homecoming for a man who spent 6 years in Pakistan.
Well, yes, the ordeal is over. Joy, happiness and little tears marked that emotional reunion. Even God cannot reject a mom's appeal, and this was just a mortal government in Islamabad. And finally, Nihal is here in Wagah, and he will be coming to Delhi and then, of course, Mumbai. Here at WION, we covered the entire journey all through the day from Mardan to Lahore to Wagah, and then, of course, from Amritsar to Delhi. They are likely to board a bus from Amritsar and will be coming tomorrow morning here in Delhi, and they will be meeting, they're likely to meet the External Affairs Minister Sushma Swaraj. Remember, India had given 96 demarches to Islamabad for consular access. Pakistan was even denying to a certain point that Nihal was there, who of course went from Afghanistan to Pakistan, and the military court saying that he of course was convicted because of having fake Pakistani passport, but Pakistan being undiplomatic, saying that he is a spy, trying its level best to prove he was a spy, but he was a man in love. It wasn't Veer Zara, but of course it was a tragedy due to which a family suffered, and Hamid Nihal Ansari is now a symbol of so many prisoners, Indian prisoners as well as Pakistani prisoners, languishing in each other's jail, who of course have finished their terms but still languishing there. A humane view is needed. That is what Jatin Desai told WION last night.
Right, Siddhant. So in many ways, of course, his release a symbol of hope for so many other prisoners languishing, as you said, in jails, both on the Indian side and the Pakistani side. So we could only certainly hope that this would achieve some sort of a diplomatic, engagement on both sides for prisoner swaps as well. Having said that, as you rightly said, he was called a spy, and he spent 6 years in jail, despite the fact that he was only sentenced to 3, and he'd already spent 3 years in jail.
Yes, of course, he had already spent 3 years in jail, and then a military court comes. Military courts in Pakistan are not very transparent. There was no, of course, charge sheet. Nobody has seen the FIR. And then he again spent another 3 years. And after his term was over, Pakistan had no option. There was no legal recourse Pakistan could have taken. And MEA sources told a week ago to WION that they are going to release him by next week, and that day came very soon. Jatin Desai said he got a pleasant shock. He got the message through a WhatsApp that Nihal will be released through his mother, and finally, of course, the entire family, along with the journalist Jatin Desai, who of course is the hero of the story, came here in Delhi, and of course from Delhi they left to Amritsar late last night, and their ordeal is over now. They'll be going to Mumbai and starting a new life after in a sense Nihal wasting his 6 years of precious moments in life in Pakistan, in Mardan, coming back now in India, and of course now going to his hometown in Mumbai, meeting his ailing maternal grandmother also.
Right, Siddhant, thanks very much indeed for joining us for the latest there on that emotional homecoming for Hamid Nihal Ansari, who has crossed over to the Indian side and has already met his mother as well. Well, moving on to some other news now, and thousands in Hungary are protesting against the government's controversial new labour law, and protesters have taken to the streets for the 5th consecutive day to object to what they call is slave laws. And demonstrations were seen outside the state public broadcaster, the MTVA. Protesters held banners like "TV has lost its television character," saying that public TV had become a government mouthpiece. Protesters demanded an independent public media and courts, and the latest gathering has united a fragmented opposition to action against right-wing Prime Minister Viktor Orban. And the new labour rules have stated that the companies can demand up to 400 hours of overtime a year, and with outstanding payments delayed for up to 3 years as well. The government actually says that the labour reform will benefit workers as well as companies who need to fill a massive labour shortage. Earlier, security guards had to move 2 independent lawmakers after they tried to get into a studio to read out a petition against what they say is an authoritarian regime. The rallies were the latest in a wave of protests that has seen opposition parties join forces against Orban's nationalist government.
Main problem in one word is the autocracy itself. That is the point when it's coming everything. So that's that problem what we have in this country. You know, when I was 18, it was in 1990, we decided something else at that time. We didn't want a system like this now.
Gazdaságot megbénítja az állami szintű korrupció, olyan oligarchia hálózat épül ki, ami gyakorlatilag Magyarországon ismeretlen volt, ez a putyini diktatúrát jellemzi inkább. Tehát mi nem szeretnénk visszamenni a kommunista időkbe, ez, ami most Magyarországon tapasztalható, ez gyakorlatilag még a kommunista időszakban sem volt jellemző. Ez az elnyomás, és ez a
And Elena, my colleague, is now joining us to talk a little bit more about this from Paris. And Elena, well, tell us a little more about these wide-scale protests against the new labour laws in Hungary, even as the government has defended it, saying that there's a massive shortage of labour in the country.
Well, this is really the first serious unrest that Viktor Orban's government has faced since he came to power in 2010. And he did, of course, win another election just 8 months ago. So the opposition has found it difficult to organise against him, even as his government has taken over increasingly the independent media and the judiciary, and has, of course, broken the European Union's rules on the rule of law with its taking control of Hungary's courts. So the European Union is in the middle of a process that could eventually result in the sanctioning of Hungary for having broken rules on the rule of law. But we have yet to see much street unrest in Hungary until just over the last week. As you were saying, 15,000 people on Sunday braved below zero temperatures in central Budapest to turn out to protest. So it turns out that this law on working hours, which, as you were saying, allows companies to increase the amount of overtime employees have to do, and which the Hungarian government is defending by saying they're suffering a huge labour shortage, does seem to have finally been that shot in the arm that's woken up the Hungarian opposition and sent tens of thousands of mostly students and trade unionists out demonstrating onto the streets.
Right, Elena. Well, thanks for that. But stay with us, as there's, of course, a lot of unrest taking place in Europe. And the French Prime Minister has, in fact, for the first time conceded that mistakes had been made dealing with the Yellow Vest protests. And the Prime Minister acknowledged that the government dealt with the situation badly from the start and was now trying to hear the Yellow Vest protesters more closely. And Prime Minister Philippe said that he was open to one of Yellow Vest protesters' newest demands, which is passing a law enabling the citizens and not the president to call for a referendum and change existing legislation. But the outline and timeline of the debate are still unclear, as is planned to start in the next 3 months with no clear agenda yet.
Ce fut d'abord la colère contre une taxe. Et le Premier ministre a apporté une réponse en annulant et en supprimant toutes les augmentations prévues pour le début d'année prochaine. Mais cette colère est plus profonde.
Edouard Philippe stated as of today, this morning in the French press, the crisis has been very badly dealt with. I mean, it was really, it took three interventions on the part of the French President Emmanuel Macron, just to gain a little calmer situation, just in order to make it more quiet.
And well, so far 8 people have died as a result of the protest. The Yellow Vest movement started in mid-November with protests at junctions and roundabouts against the fuel tax increases, but quickly became a wider mobilization against Macron's economic policies.
Nous avons commencé, dès la semaine dernière, des ronds-points ont été évacués, nous allons poursuivre cela. Vous savez, samedi, il y a eu une 8e personne qui est morte. C'était à Avignon, un jeune homme, gilet jaune de 23 ans. C'était la veille, une jeune femme de 25 ans qui a été victime d'un accident arrivant sur un rond-point occupé, mais non signalé, et donc elle a perdu la vie. 8 morts. Est-ce que vous connaissez un autre contentieux social sur ces 30 dernières années qui a tué autant de personnes? Donc je le dis clairement, ça suffit. Ça suffit pour la sécurité des gilets jaunes eux-mêmes. Ça suffit pour la sécurité de nos concitoyens. Ça suffit aussi pour la sécurité de...
And well, Alina is still with us. And Alina, well, the French president certainly did not bargain for these long-drawn protests spilling week after week. Another indication that the anger is spilling over and is much deeper than he expected.
Yes, they are subsiding. We saw significantly fewer people out onto the street last Saturday than we have over the previous 4 weeks, perhaps because it was bitterly cold and because we're coming up now, of course, to Christmas. So the movement does seem to be subsiding now, which doesn't, of course, mean that there might not be more protests in the new year if people feel that the government is not listening to them. Now, President Emmanuel Macron is launching a public consultation this afternoon, which aims to encourage people to bring their own contributions over the course of the next couple of months to a series of meetings that will be held with mayors around the country on several key themes, including taxation, the role of the state in people's lives, and democracy and citizenship. So essentially the government is saying, we're going to listen to you, tell us what you want us to do, and we will then be moving forward and proposing new legislation probably in March after this consultation, which could include, as you were saying, some proposals like the ones that some Yellow Vest protesters have been touting in recent days, like including a mechanism to allow for having referendums more easily if a certain amount of people sign an online petition demanding to be allowed to vote on a particular issue, or a mechanism to recognise when voting when people don't want to choose either one of the candidates but would like to go for a none of the above option. So these are kind of, we've moved on really. The Yellow Vest argument has moved on from being just about taxation to being what some people perceive as a democratic deficit, where people feel that they're not being listened to by the government, and the government then is considering democratic reforms, constitutional reforms that could try and quell that feeling.
All right, Alina, thanks very much indeed for joining us with the latest there. The protests have moved down to hopefully more negotiations as the Christmas season kicks in, and the French president and the Prime Minister agreeing that some of those things they did weren't wrong and they did not listen to protesters in time. Well, so it's quite clear that there is rising anger in Europe over the slowing economy. In Belgium, we saw thousands of people also spilling into the streets against a United Nations pact that in fact has claimed at fostering cooperation on migration issues, and the Flemish right-wing parties called the march, which took place near major European Union institutions amid fears that the pact could lead to an increase in immigration. Over 5,000 protesters gathered outside the European Union's headquarters. As clashes intensified, the police tried to control the crowds by using water cannons and tear gas. The signing of the pact had brought down the Belgian government last week. And the deal, which is not legally binding, seeks an international approach to migration that reaffirms the sovereign rights of states to determine their national migration policy and assert the fundamental importance of legal migration. But critics in Europe believe it will lead to increased immigration to the continent. In other news now, and the former Trump National Security Advisor Michael Flynn will be sentenced on felony charges today. Michael Flynn will be sentenced after he previously pleaded guilty to one count of lying to the FBI about his contacts with Russia. Prosecutors allege Flynn did willfully and knowingly make false statements to the FBI agents about his conversations with the Russian ambassador. He has been cooperating with the Robert Mueller probe since his guilty plea. In the meanwhile, the former FBI Director James Comey criticized President Donald Trump for lying about the FBI and accused Republicans of being too weak to stand up for the truth. Comey was speaking in reference to an earlier FBI probe of Hillary Clinton's use of a private email server while she was Secretary of State. He also referred to a former British intelligence officer who was employed by a firm funded by Democrats during the presidential campaign.
So another day of Hillary Clinton's emails and the Steele dossier. This while the President of the United States is lying about the FBI, attacking the FBI, and attacking the rule of law in this country. How does that make any sense at all? Republicans used to understand that the actions of a president matter, the words of a president matter, the rule of law matters, and the truth matters. Where are those Republicans today? At some point, someone has to stand up, and in the face of fear of Fox News, fear of their base, fear of mean tweets, stand up for the values of this country and not slink away into retirement, but stand up and speak the truth.